Hi there. So for this extra step, what we're going to be doing is setting up a kind of fake version of a chest. It still technically can give you gold, but the idea is that this chest is going to explode and actually deal damage to our player. So kind of like a mimic from some games where you have a chest that's actually an enemy. Of course, you can't actually fight the chest in this case, but it is still going to kind of fight back on its own. So to start, what we need to do, of course, we're going to test this in our base scene as we always do, but then you will move this then into one of your dungeon scenes. We're going to go into our resources folder, go to the prefabs folder, and find our environments prefabs. And you should see the chest in here. We're just going to drag that out somewhere into our environment. Next, what we want to do is go to the add component button, and we're going to type explosive chest, just like that. It's going to pull up our new script window, and we'll hit create and add. That is going to move our script into the assets folder. So we're going to want to move that from assets into resources, and then open up resources, move that from resources into scripts. Eventually, Unity is always going to take a second to catch up, so you just got to wait a second. And then once it's in resources and Unity finishes thinking, then we move it into created. Once it's in created, we can go ahead and open the script up. And of course, this will take a second. But once it is open, we can actually just delete, start, and update. We're not going to be making use of those in this script. We're going to start with 3 variables. We're going to add a public game object explosion prefab. This is going to hold a explosion particle effect that we're going to use to obviously show the player that it exploded. So we're going to say public float explosion damage. Explosion damage. And then public float explosion range. Next, we're going to add a public method. So we're going to say public void explode, open and close parentheses, and there a semicolon. Then we'll say game object explosion equals instantiate, and then in angled brackets game object, open and close parentheses, explosion prefab. So what that's going to do is create a new game object that's a copy of our explosion prefab, and then assign that game object to a variable here, a local variable specifically. Next, we're going to set our explosion game object's transform.position equal to our transform.position, so right on top of our chest. And then we're going to set explosion.transform.parent, explosion.transform.set_parent. There we go. We're going to set that equal to null. This is just a safety measure. Sometimes instantiation can do some weird things with parenting. We want to make sure that our explosion's parent is null because we're going to destroy the chest after we play the game object, or play the particle effect. So we want to make sure the particle effect isn't still attached to our chest when it destroys itself. Otherwise, the explosion will cut itself off. The particle effect will stop playing. Next, we're going to make another local variable, a game object player. We're going to set that equal to gameObject.find, and then in quotation marks and parentheses, the word player. That's just going to get a reference to our player wherever they are in the scene and assign it to that local variable. Then we'll say if vector3.distance between our transform.position and our player.transform.position. If that is less than our explosion range, then inside of the curly brackets here, we want to tell our players get component for player stats. We want to make that guy take damage equal to our explosion damage. So it's going to make sure our player is close enough to our chest for it to actually take damage. And then finally, we are going to destroy our game object after a 1/4 second delay by saying destroy and then game object comma 0.25. That number variable at the end there, our number value tells the destroy method how long to wait before it actually destroys it. Once you've got all that done, go ahead and save the script and then head back over to Unity, where once Unity finishes compiling and doing all the thinking stuff, if we select our chest, we'll see on the chest component we have some variables we need to fill out. So we need to enter a damage value. I'm going to choose something pretty high like 30, but I'm going to give it a low range like 3. Even though I think generally speaking, unless it's a very short range, if they're close enough to open the chest, they're probably close enough to get hurt by it. Then I'm going to go into my prefabs folder in resources, go to effects, and you will find there are some particle effects in here for us to play with. We want the big explosion effect, and we are going to just drag that right in to our explosion prefab. And that's all there is to it. The last thing that you'll probably want to do, you don't have to do this necessarily. You can just set up the script on each chest you'd like, but you can also opt to make a prefab. You can just drag, maybe rename this to like explosive chest, and then drag the prefab in there. Either way, all you need to do is just make sure you check setup after you have your explosive chest component on here. And then once you make a new prefab, you can reuse that in any of the scenes or dungeon levels that you have. And yeah, that's it. Once you're finished up, just go ahead and save your scene.